Okay, I'm very sorry for the delay. I suggest let's start. So today we are very lucky that we have Christopher, but first I want to start with a few slides, some Azure updates, and give a chance for a few more people to join. So as you know, we're doing these Azure updates basically to say what's going on with Azure. But before that, let's start with a little bit housekeeping. If you want to use the internet, there is a new rules in the office. This is the network, and MS Event 3680 is the code. So if you want to use a Microsoft 3 network, please use details. Okay, and Azure updates. As you remember, we had these presentations for almost all of our events. And I want to give a quick update what's going on in this month, because there is so much going on with Azure, so it's really, really difficult to keep up to date with the latest developments. So the first one that I want to share is, maybe this is not new for you, but it was something interesting for me, and I was also lucky to give some feedback about this part of Azure. Now there is an official website that gives you more information about the Azure Roadmap, what will happen, when it will happen, and what is the current state of the features that are already released. So if you go to this URL, azuremicrosoft.com/NUS roadmap, you'll be able to filter by product, by status, and to see what is the level basically on each of the products. And it's very interesting because before that, I was able to get this information only internally from Microsoft employees, and they were able to say, okay, this will come in that period of time, this is at that stage. So I think it's very, very useful. So please go there and to see actually what is already available, what is kind of new, and so on. And this is the current list of the releases in June. As you can see, we have a lot going on. So it will be interesting to see at high level what is happening. So let's go over quickly. Let's go quickly over this list. So there are very interesting announcements with Service Fabric. So Service Fabric started releasing SDKs and runtime previews for Linux. And this is very, very exciting because obviously we'll be able to cover more open source scenarios and enterprises that does not use only Windows. So the new things for the Linux part is that we have enhancements for the containers. Now we have support for volume drivers as well as log drivers. Also, it's very interesting that you can send all the container logs to OMS and then see it in the Azure portal. So it's a very nice experience, basically utilizing the power of OMS and getting a lot of data from your containers. And also there is something interesting that I didn't know about it, but obviously there is a Jenkins plugin that allows you a lot easier to deploy to Service Fabric. So now there is a nice improvement to that. Basically, the state of this Jenkins plugin will go to Xstore. So this means that if you're running the Jenkins plugin on Service Fabric, if the node crashes down, a new node can be created and to restore this state, so you'll not lose data or configuration. There is also very nice integration between Eclipse and Service Fabric. So the team is working constantly on improving the experience. So now from Eclipse IDE, you can manage your Service Fabric cluster. So now there is interesting improvements. Now you can edit the manifest file directly in Eclipse in a native way. And also there is additional information that is coming in terms of description of the services in Eclipse. So again, this is not Visual Studio, this is Eclipse, and I think it's great that more and more people using Java and open source tools can use Service Fabric. And also the experience for creating a new project or creating a new service is enhanced, and you can get automatically some data coming from the service template page. Also, now we have separation for the EO2 that will cover two different scenarios for containers and guest executables. So as you know, Service Fabric is very, very powerful service and allows you to run not only native components, but actually any executable. You can throw it and take advantage of the very advanced DevOps scenarios. So now we have a completely different support for this scenario, which is great. And also the Yeoman templates are migrating from the project.json to CPROC files a little bit more native.NET experience. And there is only one command that you can migrate your projects up to this level. And of course, there are a lot of announcements for Windows, but you can see the announcements for Windows are one slide, and the announcements for Linux were like a 3 slides. So I think this shows again how heavily the team is working actually to support like open source scenarios and Linux scenarios. We have very interesting stuff also on the Windows side. For example, like a change the node deactivation help report, fixing issues with logs. Also some fixes on the DNS part, mainly like these are bug fixes, and also improving the cluster resource manager's view of the node capacity using resource governance. So now let's jump to SQL Data Warehouse, where we have identity property coming. And now we can use this identity property as part of a surrogate keys. The context that you can use that thing is, for example, when you have a query like a select into with pre-existing identity column or set identity insert, or when you're loading data from external sources with insert select or insert values. And then you have like a sys identity column DMD. So additional options. Fortunately, there is some stuff that are not supported yet, but I guess since they were announced, probably the team will work soon on them. Just calling the identity in these cases, still it's not supported. So if you plan to use a data warehouse, please be careful. Some of the things supported, some of things not yet. Azure SQL database will be only managed and accessible for the new portal from July 1st. So if somebody is still using the classic portal, please consider you'll be actually forced to go and use only the new portal, which I think it's a great change. The new portal, it's a lot more flexible and improving all the time. Again, for the data warehouse, there is an interesting tool that will allow you to do a lot of the features that before that we have like with the generate script wizard for a command line that will basically have the same experience on any single operating system, like Mac OS, Windows, Linux. So with this tool, you'll be able to use DDL, DML, and to actually work with all of the data, almost all of the data store projects that we have in Azure. SQL database, data warehouse, SQL server on a virtual machine. So I think very, very interesting capability that allow you to actually use it in various scenarios and potentially even include it in automation. So you can see on the next slide, it will allow you to generate .SQL files and also be able to use other tools for integration. And then you can check in these files in your source control and use them basically for automation and advanced DevOps scenarios, which I think is great. So you can imagine that you're working on your database with this tool, you get your files in the source control. After that, you have like a DevOps pipeline that can recreate the whole environment quickly. And again, this tool is following the pattern that is set by Azure SQL 2 tools based on Python. And the team is actually accepting pull requests on GitHub. So if you're passionate about it and you want to contribute, please follow this link. This is something very interesting. So the traffic manager has a fast fail over feature. So basically, you can choose to fail over quickly to different URL if you detect that the one URL that is serving your traffic is not performing expected. So now we can shorten the period from 10 seconds, from 30 seconds to 10 seconds for these checks. And also we can configure the number of tolerant failures. So really to speed up like a failover to another URL. And also there is some, of course, price implications. You need to pay like $1 more for each of these URLs. But the team is actually accepting pull requests on GitHub. So if you're passionate about it and you want to contribute, please follow this link. because you can imagine that Azure will spend more resources, like checking more often about the health of these endpoints. And if you're targeting external endpoints, this will cost you $2 more per external endpoint. Again, it's very interesting that you can actually configure it, integrate it in a different way: CLI, PowerShell, REST. And there is one more about the traffic manager. This is a TCP probing. So, for example, if you want to check your SQL database, what is the health of your SQL database endpoint, and you can not do it over HTTP, you can do it through TCP again through the traffic manager. So, again, I think a little bit more challenging, more interesting architecture pattern, but we have the capability now, and I think it's very interesting if you want to design something that really abstracts your SQL servers and have the traffic manager in front of it. So this one doesn't have any cost implications, so definitely go and check it out. Azure Automation. A lot of people are complaining that the schedule jobs are using out-of-date modules. So now the team is basically enforcing to use only the latest version of the modules that are referenced by a certain job. So again, you have to be careful if you have multiple versions of the modules that are referenced in your runbooks. First test it locally before you create a schedule, because the schedule will actually enforce to use only the latest one. And if this will create unpredicted effects on your site, can be potentially dangerous. But I think most of the cases, people would prefer to use the latest version of the modules that are used by the runbooks. And this is the schedule for the list of this feature. I think for us, the most important day is July 11th, Japanese. If you also have if you're using also other regions, be careful about it. So Azure Storage Service Encryption is a great feature. Now this will start to cover even the managed disks. Managed disk is an amazing new feature. So now the storage capability for encryption at rest will cover managed disk. This will become immediately active and will be applied to any new disks and to any existing disks. So you get encryption at rest directly from the platform. So if you have special requirements, your organization have special requirements for storing the data in a very secure way, this is just a huge enabler. So June 10 actually already started. And this is also interesting if you're using Azure Active Directory B2C and you want to provide the UI in various languages. Now you can do it easily. Basically, it has support for the 36 different languages, and with OpenID Connect parameters, you can provide these values, and also you can provide your customized resources. So the user experience is really native, targets the user in their preferred language. And one more, we have a more advanced features coming to Azure SQL Database Premium. So now you can create more than 8 indexes, memory optimized tables. Basically, some of the limits are relaxed. So now you have more flexibility and capabilities around that. And you can use case expressions with a cross-apply operator. And I want to recommend 2 resources that I found during the month. So there is a very good course on this URL for architecting distributed cloud applications. So this is a generic course. It's not applied only to Azure. This Jeffrey Richer, he's a partner software architect, but he started basically a course saying the principles are very fundamental. So if you design an application for AWS, you can easily follow. If you have deployments in GCP also, obviously there will be references to Azure, but I think it's a very interesting course, and I'll be waiting actually for a long time to see more architecture-driven courses, recommendations how we build our applications in a good way. And this is a great segue to the next set of recommendations. So there is this Cloud Architecture Whiteboard webinar series that are focusing on 3 key capabilities of cloud application: availability, scalability, and resiliency. So please Google for that, or I can give you the link, but it's super easy to find it. So these are webinars, each of them around 1 hour, where architects from Azure are discussing what are the best practices, how you can tackle certain issues, how you build your application in a scalable way. They're discussing several design patterns, but very, very interesting material. So again, this one and that one, I was waiting for a really long time to see more like architectural guidance. We've been seeing a lot of demos about the latest technologies, how to use them, how to configure them, but this is a little bit stepping back out of the speed that Azure is developing and trying to think how to build our application in the right way. And another page that I would like to recommend you, these are the Azure events. So you can, by opening this page, you can see what are the next webinars. So most of the webinars are not very, are not in a time zone that is very friendly to Japan, but they're recorded in a day or two after the live broadcast. So definitely check them out on this URL. So let's see. This is it. Just give me 1 second. I need to invite Chris to this live broadcast because I did some changes, and we'll start with the main part for today. So just give me 1 second.
Okay, so you created a new. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. You're just going to email that to me?
Yes.
Okay.
Just 1 second. So I send you a request over the email. So can you check? Maybe you get a link.
Just waiting.
Yep. So how many of you guys are using Bot Framework today? Nice.
Wow.
Great.
Node or C#? C#. Okay, cool. You're going to see it in Node.
Yeah. I also want to say it in Node.
Which I think is honestly the better way to do it anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think there's just the way that it's put together, I think it's just a little bit more natural in Node versus C#. So, but you know,
I think my own opinion. I think it's the same for functions.
I haven't worked enough with functions to form an opinion, but just the fact that you have a slightly different version of C#, I think is enough to make me want to go run to do things in Node.
Well, what's your opinion? You have lots of experience with C# and functions.
With Visual Studio 2017 tooling, it's actually a much smoother process.
Nice.
This is just taking its own sweet time.
Okay, let me give you the link. Send also an email direct.
Yeah, I'm actually, I don't think I've gotten it anywhere. I'm just gonna, oh, okay. I'm gonna go the sort of old-fashioned way. Just gonna go through all of it.
Great.
Maybe.
So what kind of bots are you guys building?
There we go.
I'm just trying to learn how to do it.
Nice.
Everything's internal.
Internal. Hmm. Do you plan to expose it externally, or it will be internal?
Yeah, some customers are wanting to expose, or some customers are they only use in their internal.
Yeah. What kind of functions?
For searching documents.
Oh, great.
Literally stuff and very messy.
Ooh.
Okay, and it looks like I am
Yes.
all connected here. So let me screen share my entire screen. Why don't you give me
Yeah, how to do that?
just
I see.
unplug and lob that at me.
Okay. I see your screen. I see a presentation. Here we go.
Now eventually everybody else done. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. Maybe. Let's duplicate. Waiting. And I sort of did this to myself because I had said earlier, oh, I don't need to worry about testing the screen. I know it'll work. Used enough systems. Try that one more time.
Oh, it's coming. Yes.
There we go. Okay. Cool. All right. My colors are going to be slightly off because I'm using Flux. So if it's just like slightly off-white, that's why. But in any event, let's take a look at both bots as well as cognitive services. And what I want to do over the next, say, 45 minutes or so is really just kind of take a lap around a couple of the biggest cognitive services that you'll probably find yourself reaching for, in particular Q&A Maker and Lewis, and talk about what they can do really, really well. And then I want to get a little bit technical and talk about the biggest skill that you're going to need to have, I think, when putting together bots, which is dialogue management. And we'll take a look at, again, how to do that in Node. You'll also notice my basic information there. I'm an SDE with Ted based out of Redmond, and my Twitter handle up there as well, if you're so inclined. Now, this is kind of the classic example of a bot that somebody comes in and says something like, I'd like to search for a restaurant. Bot comes back and says, sure, not a problem. Where do you want to look? Uses San Francisco, and then we just kind of work our way down from there. And what you'll notice is the user's able to describe what it is they're looking for, and then interact through a language-based or a text-based interface. Now, before we go any further on this, it definitely is worth taking a little bit of a step back and see how we got there. We started with this, either a soup prompt or a dollar prompt, depending on your particular direction that you prefer. And the command line was nice because you just simply told the computer what you wanted it to do. Of course, the catch was you were telling it what you wanted it to do in a language that you didn't necessarily understand, especially when you were first starting out. And, oh, by the way, if you mess something up, it's just going to go in and delete all of your files. Now, chances are everybody in here favors the command prompt. That if you're trying to do something, chances are you go diving straight for the command prompt. You don't muck around with a Windows application. And the reason for that is because you appreciate the power and because you also have the experience. You already know the language. What happens if somebody doesn't know the language? Well, how about we put everything out in front of them then? Let's give them menus. And if we're going to have menus, we may as well have menus for our menus. And if we're going to have menus for our menus, we may as well have menus for our menus for our menus. And it becomes very hard to try and find what it is that you're looking for here. The reason that the switch to the ribbon happened was because according to our telemetry, about 90% of the features that users were requesting to be added to Office were actually already in the product. It was just that nobody could find it because of the menu system. And then, of course, we moved to the web. And what's nice about the web is you don't have to install anything, but once again, we're back to where we started. Good luck trying to find anything. Keep looking. Maybe it's somewhere on that page. Oh, and when you go to the next page, you're going to have to start all over again. And the part that I really love about these couple of slides is this page is the Office 365 website. This page here is the original version of the bot framework page. These are two websites from the exact same company that look completely different. And this is a real challenge. So what we want to do is move from a scenario where users are trying to figure out the computer and get to a system where the computer can figure out the user. So then what is a bot? Well, at its absolute simplest, a bot is an app. And whenever I'm doing bot framework training, this is the biggest thing that I harp on. All that a bot is it's just simply an app. But it's a different style app, a different style of app, he said in English. It allows my user to describe what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and the bot can then respond to that. Now, the best scenario, I think, for an initial rollout of a bot is with a fact bot. That every organization has a set of questions that everybody needs answers to. So rather than creating a fact page, which can be very problematic for users to try and navigate, let's just allow the user to ask the question, and then we'll give them the answer. But this is fraught with problems. Because the knowledge base, chances are, already exists. I've got much better things to do with my time than recreate all of that. It often requires developers, and my developers aren't necessarily SMEs in the domain area. So what I really want to be able to do is empower my knowledge workers to do this on their own, but they're, of course, not developers. So how do we manage this? Well, one great tool that we can use is a little thing called Q&A Maker. And what Q&A Maker will do is it will create a queryable endpoint. It just creates a REST endpoint. And it's going to automatically ingest a knowledge base for me, and then allow me to let my knowledge workers go in and update that. So that way, I don't have to worry about manipulating and working with all of those various questions. And so the obligatory screenshot looks a little bit like this. And I'm going to get in and show my demo, but you look like you want to interrupt me.
Yes, because I don't see you in the Hangouts thing. Did you close it or something?
Oh, wait a minute. Apparently I did.
Okay.
I don't think that I did. Oh, it crashed.
I see, okay. So let's try one more time. If it doesn't work, we'll skip that.
There we go.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Okay. So let me fire up this little website here for Ragnar. Now, for those of you not familiar with Ragnar, it's a US-based relay race that basically over the course of 20-some-odd hours, you have 12 different runners divided into 2 different bands, and you just relay run over the night, clearing 320 kilometers. Now, there's an awful lot of moving parts here. And so if you decide, hey, this is something that sounds like a lot of fun to me, then you probably have some questions. And if you look through their website here, and I'm not picking on Ragnar when I do this, you're going to notice that there's a lot of great ways that I can give them my money. That they make it very easy for me to register. They make it very easy for me to shop. But doing something like asking a basic question, not easily indexed here. And Ragnar's not alone. Most websites, if not all websites, are optimized to take your money and not necessarily give you direct access to the information that you want. It'd be kind of nice if we could get the information that we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab a little FAQ document for the one that took place in Chicago. And you'll notice that it's a PDF file, standard fact page, cool. So I'm just going to copy that little link, and I'm going to head over to Q&A Maker.ai. And I'm going to create a brand new service, and this will be my Meetup demo. And then it will ask me, all right, well, what's the URL for your FAQ? Paste that in. If you happen to have documents, you can upload them manually here. Or if you don't have any starting point, not a problem. You can just create a knowledge base manually. And so now what I'm going to do is click Create. And with blinding speed and amazing accuracy, it will then ingest all of that information and create a knowledge base here. Now, one big thing that I want to mention is it is a copy of your data. So you will need to keep this up to date as information changes. Now, if I scroll down, you'll notice that it has all the various question and answer pairs. But if I go back up to the top, you'll notice that it automatically just added in a hi there, and it gave me back an answer of hello. And that's the first thing that my bot will send down to a user when they try to connect. Which is probably not the most helpful response. So I should give them a little bit of a description. Something like, hi there, I'm the Ragnar bot. I can help you with information about Ragnar and about reporting lost runners. Cool. So I've got that. Let me save retrain. And let me go to the test screen. And what you're going to notice about the test screen is that it effectively gives me a little bot. And so it automatically sends the hi message for me, and it comes back and says, sure enough, hi there, I'm the Ragnar bot. But I can add in some alternatives here. So maybe hello, yo, hey there, etc. And so all of those different things and things that are similar to that will then trigger that initial hello response. And I can continue testing this. So I could ask a question like, when do I need to wear safety gear? And sure enough, this will come back and tell me safety gear needs to be worn when you like things during active hours at 7:25. If you start at 5:25, you don't need to wear safety gear. Fantastic. But I've got other questions. Maybe like, do drivers need to wear safety gear? And you'll notice that it came back and it gave me the exact same answer. It's not really what I was looking for here. Looking for something that's specific to drivers. And so over here on the left side, you're going to notice that there's actually 3 possible answers that it thought might be right. It was just most sure about that one. And so now I can go in and I can start looking at the other. We do everything we can see the course safe. No, that's not really what I'm looking for. Like there's of course, van drivers need to wear a reflective vest. Cool. That's really the answer that I was looking for. So I just choose that. I now hit save and retrain. And now if I go back, do drivers need to wear safety gear? You're going to notice that it now gives me the right answer. So now I'm ready to take this and put this out to the outside world. So I click publish, and I click publish. And what you'll notice is that this now gives me information on how to call this as a REST endpoint. It tells me that I need to post to that path. It gives me the root URL. I need to add that little key into my header. And then down below, you're going to notice that I need to post up the question as a basic little JSON object with question and then the value. And so I can actually use this in any type of application, not just a bot. So going back to the website, if you just wanted to do this with jQuery, you can absolutely do it. But I'm here to talk about bots, so let's do it with a bot. So I'm going to use a little Yeoman generator for Bot Builder. By the way, if you're curious, it's simply called generator-bot builder. You just fire up Bing, do a search. What's the name of my bot? Ragnar demo. What does it do? Provide information about Ragnar. What language? And I'm going to choose JavaScript, but I want to put in a bit of a plug for TypeScript here. I love TypeScript, and TypeScript and bot development are just this fantastic marriage. Because one of the things that you'll notice about building bots is that it's going to get kind of complex. And I'm going to want to take those different files and put them into different places. And the moment you start doing that in JavaScript, IntelliSense just falls flat. Because I don't have the ability to, among other things, declare a variable. Whereas with TypeScript, I can do that. So I really am a big fan of TypeScript. I very rarely demo TypeScript just because not everybody does it, and I don't want to put up yet another hurdle in front of somebody trying to learn how to build bots. But personally, when I'm building bots, I'm building them in TypeScript. I love TypeScript for bot development. Okay, so I'm going to go with JavaScript, and I'm going to choose the Q&A maker template that I already have. And then this is automatically going to start installing all the various packages. Voila. So CD and then the Ragnar demo and code dot to open that up. That one was from earlier. This is the one that I want. Okay. So what my little Yeoman generator does is it creates a handful of different sample files for me. And this is the first one that I want to highlight, which is the Q&A maker. Now, if you've never seen Bot Framework before, especially if you've never seen it in JavaScript, the way that it's designed to work is with a waterfall. That I just simply give it a series of different functions, and as one completes, it will just simply move to the next, move to the next, move to the next. Now, in my case here, it really is just simply a single entry here. Now, what's going to happen is we're going to read the question that the user sent in. Turns out for whatever reason we have one, we'll just display out, hey, didn't understand it, but chances are we'll have it. And then I'm going to call send typing. And what that will do in the channel, in the client, is it will automatically put in those 3 little ellipses that you would see kind of bouncing around. And that's effectively the little globe spinning from the good old IE days, if you will. That's the indication that your bot is actually doing something behind the scenes. When in doubt, send typing. Because one of the big challenges with a bot is somebody types something and they hit send. And if they don't get anything back, which is what I was trying to simulate there, they're going to get really nervous really quickly. And maybe try to send another message, and another message, and another message. So when in doubt, send typing. And then from here, really starting at line 28, there is nothing fancy. I'm just creating a basic little JSON object and converting that into a string. So question being the property, question being what it is they typed in. And if I come back over here, you'll notice that's exactly what I'm creating. The next part is I'm going to set up the path. I'm then going to get myself a JSON client and add in that subscription key as a header. And then I just simply call post. And then from post, I'm going to get back an object right here that's going to give me 2 properties. A 0-100 base score on how sure it is that it got the answer right, and then an answer property. So you'll notice the rest of my code here. Check to see whether or not the score is greater than 50. If it is, great. We'll just print out the answer. If it's less than 50, greater than 0, we'll print out, hey, I'm not sure if this is right, but here's what I know. And then finally, if it turns out that it's 0, then we just simply display back, I don't have the answer for that. Now, in order for this to work, there are a couple of little environmental variables that I need to set up, which are right here and here. So I need that KP ID, copy, paste. I need my subscription key, copy, paste, and now, so I can save that, Christopher. Nodemon app.js. Fire up the bot emulator. Take a drink of water. And pause for questions while we wait for that bot emulator to launch.
This environment that you showed, the website, it's something standard coming from the bot framework, where you train the model and you publish.
It's not technically part of bot framework, but it is developed by the same team, so that you can use this outside of bot framework. So probably the most common scenarios with building bots, but you can absolutely use this outside of bot framework.
So when you train it, this is actually going to the Lewis model when you're putting like a high and low, all that stuff.
You know, I've yet to hear what the actual mechanisms that are being used behind the scenes with the Q&A maker actually are. That the handful of times that I've asked somebody from Fuse Labs, I've basically gotten an answer that it uses Lewis.
Somehow.
And that's it, exactly. So I don't know if it's doing it when questions come in. I don't know if it's doing it when it's building up the knowledge base. Like I don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes, and I've never been told. So I don't know if it's some great secret like the recipe for Coke, and they don't trust me with it. But I've just never gotten an answer. Okay. So now I can go ahead. When do I need to wear your safety gear? You'll notice that it gave me the little send typing, and sure enough, it comes back with the response. And again, if I decide that I need to go in and update this, like let's say, for example, that I wanted to change the times here. Where are you? There we go.
There we go.
So let's say, for example, instead of 7:30, let's say 8:30, just to make a simple change. We'll save retrain. I'm just going to take out a little insurance, but just do it one more time. And then republish. And now what you'll notice, I didn't even restart my bot here, is I just simply, when do I need to wear safety gear? And sure enough, it's now going to come back and tell me 8:30 or 8:25. Cool. Now, the thing about Q&A Maker is it's great for creating a stack bot. It's kind of nice for creating a proof of concept, but that's about all that this can do. And what I'd really like to be able to do is to allow somebody to send a message and us figure out what it is the user is trying to say. Now, I mentioned earlier that a bot is simply an app. And so right here, I've got a little sketch of a Windows app. Just pretend that it was drawn by a 4-year-old and not a 44-year-old. And it's kind of a basic thing that I've got two little text boxes, spot for my contact, spot for the message, and a little send button. And when somebody clicks send, we call a little event handler, which will read the contact, read the message, and call send a message. Now, when I'm creating a Windows app, it's really obvious to me as the developer what the user's trying to do, because they clicked on a button. And it's really easy for me to figure out which piece of information is which, because they filled out labeled text boxes. But in a bot, something like this. Tell Larry I'm doing a great job. By the way, Larry's my manager. Now, I want to be able to do the exact same thing, but I have no button, and I have no text boxes. So I need to figure out how to populate that send message. I need to figure out which the contact is. I need to figure out which the message is. And I also need to figure out, is this actually what you were trying to do in the first place? And I do this without a safety net. No buttons, no text boxes. So what I need to determine is what the user's intent is. What are they trying to do? And the entities. What other pieces of information are they giving me? And so if we take a look back at the message, tell Larry I'm doing a great job. Tell is going to be our little indicator that I'm trying to send a message. Who am I trying to send it to? Larry. What's the message? I'm doing a great job. So it's exactly what we saw on the Windows app, just in a different format. So I once again want to call send message, and I want to go grab Larry, and I want to go grab that message. But unlike the Windows app, where I have things like validation, and I can make sure that that button doesn't even appear unless you've filled everything out. I don't get that in this scenario. Somebody could just simply type in and send a text to Larry, and I have to be able to adjust for that. And somebody could also type in, send a message saying I'm doing a great job, and again, I have to adjust for that. And it's even possible somebody might send me no information whatsoever, and once again, I need to adjust for that. So my application design does need to get a little bit different. And the other big thing that I need is something that can figure out, hopefully, some of the intents and the entities for me. And this is where Lewis comes into play. That Lewis does natural language processing. That it's able to when properly trained, determine various intents and entities by looking at utterances, which is a really just fantastic Scrabble word way of saying that I'm going to give it a bunch of examples. So let's take a look at Lewis. I should already be signed in. There we go. Okay. Let me create an app. Pull Ragnar down. And I'm not going to worry about a description. And I've got a key there so it can run properly on Azure. And so now, zoom out one more. There we go. I can start setting up my intents. These are the things that I'm expecting from my user. For example, maybe my intent is lost runner. Now, one of the things about Ragnar is they don't close down roads. They just put out signs. And when it's 3 in the morning, it's very easy to miss a sign. So it's very possible that you could lose a runner. So we want to be able to report the fact that we lost a runner and maybe allow them to provide a little bit of information about where they lost said runner. So let's give it a couple of utterances. We can't find a runner. We lost a runner. Now, it's also possible somebody might give a little bit more information. So, for example, we lost a runner near Belgium. We lost a runner near the mall. So I'm now not only giving it an intent, we lost a runner, but I'm also giving it a little bit of additional information. I'm giving it entities. So I can go in and start creating or flagging those different items as entities. Now, in my case here, I'm going to stop after 4. Only because I don't think people want to watch me for the next little bit, train up, 40, 50 utterances here. I'm certain you have better things to do with your time. So I'm going to leave it here, but I do want to stress the fact that Lewis will get better the more information that you give it. So if you just give it this, it's not going to do real well. It's going to do fine for my demos, but it's not going to do real well in real life. So let me go ahead and save this. And let me go ahead and train this up. And then let me publish this. And so now what this will do is this will give me an endpoint. Now I'm going to copy. I'll do it that way. There we go. I'm going to copy my URL, but I'm going to click on it real quick just to show that, once again, like with Q&A Maker, this is nothing but a REST endpoint. So it just gives me back JSON that I could, if I wanted to, programmatically work with. But Lewis and Bot Builder work really well together. And so what I can do is just come back over here to my bit of code and make a couple of updates. Then you'll notice I've already got a spot for my Lewis model URL. And now let's go in and take a look at the starting Lewis.js file. Let's save this. And so inside of this file, what you're going to notice is a 2-step waterfall. That I'm going to look for an entity in the information that you've given me. So I'm going to take everything that was passed into this, hand this into a little helper function called find entity, and it's going to look to see if there's an entity that happens to match Let me just turn off my, is it Z? Yes, I remember. I just need to give it the name. And so in this case, my name was location. Now I also want to do this, is I'm going to update the ID. And I'm going to update the name. And I'll talk about why I'm going to do that here in a moment. But here is the waterfall. Here's the set of steps. So it's going to see, hey, did we get a location? If not, we'll ask for the location. And then in this very simple example, it's just going to print back out. You lost a runner here, and then wherever they happen to have lost the runner. So let me save that, and let me add that into my bot. So bot, oops. Let me. And bot dialog, and it asks me for the ID, lost runner, my ID. It asks me for the waterfall, that series of steps, lost runner, waterfall, and then it's going to then ask me what's going to trigger the action, and that is going to be the name that I provided. Now, I've gotten kind of a little bit fancy with my dialogue here, and I may have gotten just a touch advanced here, and if I did, I apologize. But what I'm really trying to show is a good design of managing your bot here. So that I'm making this decision as I do my presentation on purpose, because I really want you to see a good way of managing your dialogues. Because now, every time that I want to hang a new dialogue off of my bot, all that I need to do is load up the file, assuming that I just keep going with this pattern here of ID, name, and the waterfall. And then over here, when I go to register it, this is the ID that it's going to have. This is the set of functions that it's going to execute. And then when it matches the intent name, that's what's going to kick it off. And if you look at this, you could see how it would be very easy to just load all of these dynamically. Just create a file system object, look through a directory called dialogues, and then just one by one, add them on in. So that's why I like to show it this way. So now, let me go ahead and save that. And let me come back over here. We lost a runner. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I forgot one step. I didn't tell it to actually call Lewis. That's kind of important. No, I was right the first time. I think that's the name that I used. I have a great memory. It's just really short. Yes, Lewis model URL. Perfect. Okay. But by the way, this actually is kind of fortuitous. You'll notice that it wasn't 100% certain. So it kind of gave me that little hedge bet. See? I did that on purpose. All right. So let me make sure that I hit save there. I did. Let's try this again. We lost a runner. What am I missing? Oh, add it into the bot, Christopher. Recognizer. There we go. Now it's going to work. Okay, take 3. Now what you're going to notice is it will come back and say, please provide a location. And now I'll say Bellevue, hit enter, and then It gave me an error message. Ah, good. I'm actually happy about this because it gives me an opportunity to bring home another point. So I was sort of hoping that this wouldn't happen when I was going through my Lewis demo, but since it did, we'll use it as a teaching experience. You'll notice that when I execute a query of Bellevue, it's coming back and it's telling me lost runner. And the reason for that is because it doesn't know enough. That the only thing that I've shown it up to this point is just lost runner, lost runner, lost runner. So basically anything at this point, it's going to think, oh, you lost a runner. So you need to, even if you only have one intent, you need to train up the none intent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my lost runner, and you'll notice that it grabbed Bellevue here. And I'm going to tell it, actually, if we just get Bellevue, that's just a none intent. It doesn't mean anything. And I'm also going to go back to my none intent and just start adding in kind of just garbage words. So maybe like Seattle and mall and West Seattle and whatever. But now, let me retrain this. And let me republish this. And now, let me try this one more time. It might be just stuck in a loop here. There we go. Okay, so now it's behaving properly. So we lost a runner. Please provide a location. Seattle, you lost a runner near Seattle. Now I want to show that if I go back and I say, hey, when do I need to wear safety gear? That it's still going to use Q&A Maker. And this is probably the number one question that I get is, if I'm using Q&A Maker, can I still do other things with my bot? And the answer is absolutely. So the way that I've set this up right now is my default dialog, which is what I pass into the universal bot constructor, is Q&A Maker. So if it doesn't know what else to do, it's just going to take my message, lob it over to Q&A Maker, try and get a response. But if Lewis looks at a piece of information and goes, hey, I can do something with that, then what it's going to do is it's going to call this dialog here. And this is a very common pattern, that you just leave the default with Q&A Maker and then move from there. Cool. Now, from here, and by the way, feel free to interrupt me with questions.
So one more time, what was the role of this known entity or Seattle?
So the non-entity is there to really just teach Lewis what garbage words are, and to also prevent it from accidentally tripping an intent if it sees that it just happened to have one piece of information. So up to this point, when I had originally trained it, I said, we lost a runner near Bellevue, we lost a runner near the mall. And so those were the only two things that it saw. And so when I went back and I said, just Bellevue, it went, well, based on the information that I have, I think it's lost runner. And so that's what it was coming back with. And so what I needed to go back and do is say, hey, if somebody just gives me Bellevue, that's not an intent, because Bellevue could fall into a lot of different places. So instead, just ignore it. And so that's what the none intent is. You're welcome.
So does it call both services every message?
It doesn't call both services every message. It will only call the Q&A Maker if none happens to be returned. So if Lewis doesn't know what to do with it, then it's going to call Q&A Maker. However, it is going to call Lewis every single time. And that's, kind of a boon and a bane. That one nice thing about that is, and this is actually kind of perfect, is I can wind up with, there we go, a scenario like this, where somebody sends in a message and says, hey, I'd like to make a lunch reservation. The bot comes back and says, okay, well, here are the couple of times. And I'm, of course, at this point, just logically expecting that you're going to choose one of those times if I'm the bot. But it's also fully within the realm of possibility that the user could come back and say, I want a vegan menu. And so in this type of a scenario, the fact that every message does bounce off of Lewis can be very advantageous, because it can give me the opportunity to let Lewis figure out what the user is asking for, and then make sure that we give them that menu, and then, of course, bring them back and ask them to make the reservation. Without going too far into it, one of the things that you can do with the recognizer is set on enabled context, and then what is the function? Error, or actually, I'll just do it this way. Done. Okay, so in here, I can get an awful lot of information about what's going on behind the scenes. And one of the biggest things that I can do is I can take a look to see if there's any dialogues that are currently being executed. So one very simple thing that you could do is you could say length. If it turns out that there's a dialogue that's currently being executed, and we just don't want the recognizer to run, so we just want to turn off Lewis and let the dialogue finish, then what I could do is just simply this, is say if, and then say done and false, otherwise done, null, and true. So up here, I'm basically just turning off Lewis if we started a dialogue. So let's say somebody said, lost a runner, and then I go back and say, okay, well, where did you lose it? At that point, it's not going to talk to Lewis anymore. If we haven't started a dialogue, we haven't started going back and forth, then it will go ahead and call Lewis. And you can then, adjust based on what else is going on. So that would be something that you could do. Okay. And that sort of actually leads us perfectly into kind of dealing with the fact that working with a bot means working with a human, where the human is using natural language and the human is using their own logic, such as the user logic may be. And so I need to account for the fact that there's a lot of different things that could wind up happening here that I'm not necessarily expecting, that I really need my bot to be able to respond to partial information and to unexpected statements. And so a scenario like this is basically never going to happen, where the human sends in, I'd like to book a room for bot conference. I need a single occupancy, king size room, checking in on Tuesday, checking out on Friday, and the bot comes back and says, sure thing. That's never going to happen. They're going to give me partial information. And as we already saw, I need to go back and continue to collect information. I also need to deal with this randomness, which we just talked about. And while we're at it, and I don't have the slide on it, I also want to really be careful about over-indexing on text. That don't be afraid to send down buttons. You're going to notice I probably won't wind up doing a button demo in here, but buttons are a good thing because they allow me to guide the user. Don't be afraid to use buttons. Okay, so what's a dialogue? Well, it's basically like a Windows screen. That if I'm creating a Windows app, I'm going to have different screens that are going to do different things. When I'm creating a bot, I'm going to create dialogues. that are going to do different things. And they're analogous, that in each of those cases, my screens are going to collect a particular piece of information. My dialogues are going to collect a particular piece of information. They're designed for one single operation, and they're each callable from one another. But the big difference about a dialogue when it comes to a bot is the fact that they can be global, meaning that regardless of where the user happens to be, that they can type something in and get a response, which is perfect in this type of a scenario. Or it's also perfect in a scenario where what I want to be able to do is provide help. Now, I could potentially do help inside the root dialogue, but that's what's going to be called if there's no dialogues that are going on and no other dialogue, when it looks at the message, thinks, oh, that's for me. And so having something like Q&A Maker in there is perfect for a scenario like that. So what I really like to do is just flag whether or not I've done an initial setup for the user. And if I've done the initial setup, then I just simply tell them to type in help. Because universally, users have been trained that when all else fails, type help. I don't need to do anything else to get the user ready for that. So let's just go ahead and handle that. So a globally registered dialog will always be executed when the recognizer matches the utterance. And so in my case, as we saw before, that's going to be based off of that trigger action with the name. But I can also do this with a regular expression. Bot, dialog, and we'll give this an ID of help, which is spelled with a P. And we'll just go ahead and say something like this. And session, end dialog. I'm the Ragnar bot. I can help you with Ragnar issues or whatever else it is that you wanted to do there. Cool. And then I'm going to add on my trigger action. And in this case, I'm going to do this with a regular expression. So we'll just say help, like that. And so now, regardless of where I am, I type in help, even if I have a trailing L because I used a regular expression, it's going to then give me the help. Now, one little thing that I do want to caution about trigger action is that by default, this will reset any dialogues. And if I'm doing help, that's probably not what I want to have happen. So fortunately, I have a little bit of additional information that I can give oh, I know what I want. Session args. There we go. Always the risky part about just doing live code is you then count on your own memory of how well you remember the API. There we go. So with onSelect action, what this is going to do is it's going to execute just before it comes up here. And so it gives me a little bit of control where I can then say begin dialog. And then pass in the name of the action, which theoretically is help, but trust me, it has to be done this way. I don't honestly know why, but it just does. And then this is the additional information that's now going to get passed in. And so the big difference here is this won't reset stack of dialogues. So now, let me do this. Let me come back over here and let me say lost runner. Please provide a location, help. And now you'll notice that it will come back with help, and then it will say, whoa. Why are you doing that? That's weird. That shouldn't have happened. I know my code is right. Huh. That's funny. Okay. I don't know why it's doing that. I guess I do have something wrong, and I apologize for that. A couple of people in here can attest that it's been a long day for me. I've been presenting since 9 in the morning. But the behavior that I was expecting is I was expecting it to just come back and again say, please provide a location. For some reason, it's not doing that. Forgive me, but that's the expected response here. Now, just to close all of this out, it is possible to programmatically call dialogues. And we actually kind of saw this with that begin dialogue. And it gives you the opportunity to be a little bit more flexible with your programming. And it gives you the ability to take what would potentially be more complex and break things down. So for example, maybe I want to allow for somebody to register. So let me say bot dialog and register. And I'm eventually going to add in a set of functions, but I'm going to add in this little trigger action. And let's say matches, and let's say register. Like that. So just kind of keeping it real simple. So the moment you type in register, it's going to match. Now, if we're going to start registering somebody, there's a little bit of information that I'm going to need to be able to collect. And some of this might be complex. Some of it might need a little bit of validation. And I don't necessarily want to list everything off in here. So fortunately, I don't have to. Now, what I could do is simply do something like this, bot dialog, and maybe get name. Session, session prompt. Builder prompts, text, session, and what is your name? And session, end dialogue, with results. And there we go. So what's going to happen here is when this gets kicked off, it's going to ask, what's your name? And then once we get the name back, which will be inside of results response, we're going to call end dialog with result. And let's actually make this a little fancier here. Instead of just a generic response, let's say name. That's what we're going to give back to you. And so when I want to launch this, inside of here, I simply say session, begin dialog, and pass in the name of get name. And then down here, I can go in and grab that value. So let's like that. So it's going to call getName. Actually, I think I still have, yeah. It's going to call getName, which is going to pass control over to this dialog. This dialog is then going to say, hey, what's your name? Once it gets it back, it's then going to end the dialog, which is just going to return control right back to here. And so my results winds up right there, and then we can print that back out. If I save this, come back over here, register. In line 36. Oh, thank you. There we go. So what is my name? Christopher. And there you have it. Okay. Now, I know admittedly that was kind of a lot of information to try and get through in, say, 40-ish or so minutes. But what I really wanted to do, and I'll take a couple of moments after after I'm done and throw this up onto GitHub. So if you want to go grab my code, you can do that. But what I really wanted to show you was a couple of very important cognitive services for Bot Framework, which is Q&A Maker and Lewis. And I really wanted to try and start to show you how you can manage dialogues, start to interact with the user, and deal with the fact that users can be a little bit weird at times. So, questions on what I've got here? I'm listening. I'm just going to set up GitHub in the background.
Going back to Q&A Maker,
yeah.
When you add a new utterance, or not utterance, you add a new alternative phrase, it just makes a second copy of the answer and the question pair, correct?
Correct.
How do you manage that? Say you want to update the answer.
Unfortunately, carefully, that there is an API that's available that I believe they now have it. Let me just double check before I say this out loud. Yeah. There is an API that is available that allows you to update your knowledge base. So that could be one potential way that you could automate that. One of the design decisions that they made was really just to keep it a simple table. And so just like you said, the problem that you run into is if I give it 3 or 4 different ways to answer the same question, I'm going to have the same answer 3 or 4 different ways. And there isn't a really good way through the UI for me to go in and update that. You could relatively easily script that out, but that does require code. So I admit it's not a real good answer, but that's the only answer I have for you at the moment.
As long as there's a way to do it.
Yeah.
One other thing was active learning with Q&A Maker.
Okay.
In the samples, they have one project where you can give multiple answers, and the user can select which one is right. Yes. And then it will automatically train after it reaches a certain threshold. And I was wondering where documentation on that would be, and if you can control settings on that.
So I know how you could program that. That when you go in and you generate an answer, as part of the parameters, you can add in a top, which will then give you back a set of answers from here. But I don't know that Q&A Maker has that built-in ability to automatically do it for you. and maybe I'm completely wrong on this, but it was my understanding that you had to go in and do that on your own, but it'd be really easy to do. I mean, it would just be a handful of more lines of code, and then you could control the thresholds and the voting and everything else from there. So I haven't seen that done automatically.
I don't know where it was, and I was trying to find the resource, but it seemed like there's more than 50 responses to a correction, and by more than 20 unique users, it would trigger this auto train event in this example. It is in, what is it? Bot Builder Cognitive Services, GitHub.
You have the.
See if I can find that other part where it was talking about how many responses.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I know. Are you who I think you are? Oh, no, you're not. Okay, I thought you were somebody else. Yeah. So what he did, and that's a fantastic implementation. Let me see if I can't. Find, but in a real quick glance at his original code, it looks like that he did exactly what I had just mentioned, is that he was going in and programming that. So I'm flipping through the code really quickly here, but just based on something that I saw earlier in here, I think that's the way that this is working. Yeah. Yeah. So he's actually he's doing exactly what I had mentioned, and he's got the API that's calling it. So that's not a Q&A maker thing, but all of the pieces are there so that you could go in and do that. So that's what he's done. So I hadn't seen this though. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really neat.
Yeah.
I enjoyed playing around with it.
I need to figure out who did that. Who are you? Huh. Okay. Anyway, yeah. Now I need to start looking around. Anyway, okay. Other questions?
So the QA builder is in preview, right?
Correct. Yeah. Q&A maker is in preview.
Yeah.
Loose is effectively in preview. Bot framework is in preview. Yeah. So everything is in preview. So we've adopted that Google perpetual beta.
Yeah.
Um,
But also there are users that use in production.
yes. Yeah. Because, well,
Yeah.
this is the world we now live in.
Yeah.
Meetup demo Ragnar. I think that was what I called it. Nope, I didn't call it that. Meetup. Ragnar demo. Okay.
What do you guys think about the Node.js part? Is it difficult?
It looks like it's way easier to implement than C#.
My work here is done. You just validated my entire trip out here.
I mean, just messing around with like the global message handlers and all that sort of thing. It's pretty painful to try and wrap your head around all of it and then overwrite everything.
Yeah. Yep, and I should state, especially because I'm being recorded here, that everything is just, this is my own opinion, but I agree with you that to me, to my brain, I think that having everything just by default being global, everything gets an opportunity to jump in at any moment. That waterfall where it's just nice, clear, and in front of me. We go to here, we go to here, we go to here. I think it's just so much simpler than the C# implementation. But again, that's my own opinion. So, yeah. By the way, here is the there's the location if you're so inclined. Try and shrink that down just a touch more. Perfect.
Do you guys have more questions?
That's all I've got. I mean, I could keep talking, but at some point I'm just going to fall asleep.
Yeah, so I think it was great. Thank you very much.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
And I really appreciate because you were talking today from 9 o'clock, as you said. So I guess that you're very, very tired.
You're very welcome.
Very welcome. Do you like it?
Okay, this is the best bot presentation I've seen. So
yeah, good job.
Thank you. You're way too kind. Thank you.
I've got a lot to learn.
By the way, if you don't mind a couple of real quick shameless plugs. AKA MS/bot course. Will take you to an MVA that Ryan Vollum and myself did going through Node. I will warn you that it's a little dated. Well, you're going to notice here in just a moment, there's a very big difference between how I look now and how I looked a few months ago. But the other thing that's worth highlighting is some of the content in here has unfortunately changed. That like trigger action, when we recorded this, didn't exist. And we haven't had an opportunity to get back into the studio and update it. There is also a bots course or a C# course. It's got the same intro, but it was Brandon Hurlbert that really ran through the vast majority of the content there. So you can check out the C# version of that on MVA. I do blog periodically at blog.geektrainer.com. And a lot of actually what you saw is based on one key blog that I wrote. Here we go. Oops, nope, that wasn't what I wanted. I do need to scroll down. There it is. Managing conversations and dialogues in Microsoft Framework using Node.js. So wrote up a blog post. I also did a Channel 9 build pre-record on the exact same topic. So if you just do a search for build bot framework dialogues, you should be able to find it that way. So again, just shameless plugs all around. Just why not?
How can we follow you? Twitter?
Twitter is Geek Trainer. No, I didn't actually vote for him, but I like to keep an eye on what he's doing. Sorry, I didn't mean to get political, but there it was. But yeah, so there's my bit of Twitter. So yeah.
Sounds great.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
All right. Beautiful. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you.